My name is Noreen Harrow, and for most of my life, I thought being quiet meant being good. I was the one who kept the peace, said thank you when I was overlooked, smiled through the holidays even when there wasn't a chair left for me. I never made a fuss, never asked for much, and I truly believed that if I just kept showing up, eventually they'd see me. But there comes a day when silence starts to feel like disappearing, and one winter afternoon, something small, just a phone call really, was enough to change everything. If you have a quiet minute, I hope you'll stay and hear the whole story. It's not loud, but it's real. And when it's done, I'd love to know, do you think I did the right thing? Or would you have chosen a different way? Leave me a comment. I'm still learning. It was a Wednesday afternoon in early February, the kind that pretends to be quiet. But somehow, I knew something was off the moment Mom called. I was at home, standing by the kitchen sink, rinsing out a coffee cup I didn't even remember using. The sun was low and watery, slipping through the clouds like it couldn't decide whether to commit to winter or just call it a day. I had the heater humming and a sweater draped over my shoulders, the kind of setup that usually brought comfort. But not that day. The phone buzzed against the counter. Mom. I hesitated for a second, then picked up. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice slower than usual, like she was easing into something. I stayed quiet for a beat. "Hey, everything all right?" She exhaled through the phone. "Well, I just wanted to tell you, we're gonna have to cancel the trip. There's a snowstorm coming in. It's not safe." At first, I didn't say anything. I just blinked, letting the words settle in like fog. "The trip?" I asked. "You mean the one I booked? The one I paid for?" "I know, honey, I know," she said, all syrup and sighs. "But we can't control the weather. I saw the report this morning. Big front coming in. Celeste said she didn't feel good about going." Of course she did. I glanced at the weather app on my phone. Nothing but light flurries, no alerts, no warnings. Just typical February drizzle in the mountains. "Which station did you see that on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice even. Mom bristled immediately. "Why does that matter? I told you, we're not going. Bon. I mean, we've already decided. There's no point in making this harder." There it was. That edge in her tone. The familiar shift from concern to control. I'd known it since I was 12, when I first realized that being the easy child just meant being the one they didn't think twice about. "Okay," I said, flat, no fight left. "Got it." She paused. "Don't be like that, Noreen." I didn't answer. After we hung up, I just stood there in the kitchen, my fingers still wet from the sink. I watched the wind rattle a branch against the window. I felt that hollow space open up in my chest again, one I'd patched up so many times with silence. I went to my laptop, opened the folder I kept labeled Winter Trip, 2025. It had everything: receipts, reservations, email confirmations. I clicked on the link to the resort booking. My name wasn't on the guest list anymore. There was a new name in the primary guest field: Celeste Harrow. I stared at it for a long time, not blinking, not breathing. And suddenly, it didn't feel like a snowstorm at all. It felt like something else entirely. A decision made quietly behind closed doors. A story rewritten without the courtesy of telling me. I scrolled through the emails I'd sent last month, the detailed itinerary, the gift cards I'd bought for the ski rentals, the group dinner I prepaid for at the lodge restaurant. Every detail I'd handled while they sent the occasional "thanks, can't wait" reply, with a smiley face at the end. I closed the laptop gently, like it might break if I moved too fast. Then I sat down on the edge of my bed, feeling the room tilt a little. Not literally, but in that way the world does when you realize you're not crazy, just excluded. I looked down at my hands. They were steady. Too steady. There had been so many little things over the years. Birthdays skipped. Decisions made without me. Family photos where I was the one behind the camera instead of in it. I told myself they didn't mean anything, that it wasn't intentional, that I just didn't mind like Celeste did. But this time, they took my name off something I created. And just like that, I knew. It wasn't the storm that canceled the trip. It was me. I didn't sleep that night. I laid there for hours, arms folded across my chest like I was bracing for impact, though the blow had already landed. My apartment was silent, save for the ticking of the kitchen clock and the low creak of the radiator. Even in the stillness, my mind kept racing back to that screen. Celeste's name, where mine used to be. By morning, the quiet had shifted. It wasn't comforting anymore. It felt like neglect made audible. I got up, made coffee I barely tasted, then sat down at my laptop again. I combed through every email, every receipt, every reservation. I wasn't looking for confirmation. I already knew. I just needed to see it all laid out, like a crime scene. There it was, plain as day. The lodge reservation I'd made under my name, now changed. Celeste Harrow, listed as the primary guest. The guest count adjusted from 5 to 4. My name gone. Just gone. This wasn't a mix-up. It wasn't weather-related. It wasn't anything but what it looked like. A quiet decision to leave me out. And the truth is, it wasn't the first time. Not even close. I remembered my 32nd birthday. They'd forgotten until Celeste posted a photo from our childhood, and someone else commented, "Isn't today your sister's birthday?" They sent a late-night text. No call. I remembered Christmas 2 years ago when we gathered at Aunt Linda's and there weren't enough chairs. I offered to sit on the floor, and no one stopped me. No one noticed. When our grandparents passed, I was the last to know. They said they didn't want to worry me because I lived farther away. But they still expected me to send flowers and show up on time for the funeral. It's funny what we tell ourselves when we want to believe we're loved. That afternoon, I met Jonas at Maple Finch Cafe. It was our usual Thursday catch-up spot. We'd met years ago at a volunteer legal clinic downtown. Me with my stacks of paperwork, him with audio equipment he barely kept from falling apart. Somehow, we clicked. Same kind of quiet. He was already at the corner table when I walked in, 2 mugs of black coffee between us, and a lemon muffin split in half on a napkin. "Hey," I said, sliding into the chair across from him. He studied me for a second, then pushed the coffee toward me. "What happened?" I didn't answer right away, just took a sip, warm and bitter. "They canceled the trip," I said. "Said there's a snowstorm coming." He raised an eyebrow. "There's not," I added. He didn't say anything, just waited. "They took my name off the reservation," I said quietly. "Put Celeste's instead." I didn't even know that was possible. I booked it, paid for everything, and they just changed it. Jonas sat back, let out a slow breath. Then he asked calmly, like he was reading a headline, "How many times have they made you feel like this, Noreen?" I didn't want to answer. My throat tightened, but I did. "Too many," I whispered, but I kept hoping it would change. He nodded, like he knew that kind of hope, the kind that wears down over time, softens into resignation. "Have you checked your bank statements?" he asked after a pause. I frowned. "For what?" "Well, if they canceled the trip, you should have gotten a refund, right? It was your card." That had never crossed my mind. I pulled out my phone right there at the table, logged into my account. I scrolled through the charges. The deposit, the meal prepay, the ski passes. Everything was still listed. Then, there it was. A refund from the resort. Not to my checking account, not even to my savings. It was sent to an external account, one I didn't recognize. I froze. I looked closer. The memo line said, "Transfer, G. Harrow." My father. I blinked hard, staring at the screen like it might change if I just looked long enough. Jonas leaned over, saw it too. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The coffee had gone cold. I hadn't touched the muffin. I sat there in the cafe, surrounded by the soft clatter of plates and the hum of other people's lives, and felt something shift in me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was the deep ache of finally knowing that you've been written out of your own family's story, and that it wasn't by accident. It was by choice. I waited 2 full days before calling my father. Not because I needed time to calm down. If anything, I'd felt too calm, but because I already knew exactly how the conversation would go. And I wasn't ready to sit through the performance I'd heard so many times before. The mix of deflection, soft tone, and just enough guilt to make me second-guess myself. By the third morning, though, the silence had started to crawl under my skin like an itch I couldn't scratch. It sat behind my ribs, tight and itchy, until I finally gave in and dialed. He answered on the third ring. "Noreen," he said, cheerful, casual, like we were just catching up on a Wednesday. "Everything okay?" I cut straight to it. "Hey, Dad, I just have a quick question. Did the refund from the lodge go back to your account?" There was a pause. "Well, yeah," he said, like it was obvious. "Since we weren't going, I had them send it to me. Figured it made sense, with Celeste's situation and all." I didn't respond right away, just stared at the wall in front of me. My voice stayed even. "What situation?" He sighed, like this was an old story I should have already memorized. "You know how things have been for her. The credit cards, that car trouble, rent went up again. Your mom and I thought it was best to let her use that money, just for now." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear. "You thought?" He paused again. Longer this time. Then he said it in that voice, that soft, parental, reasonable tone that always made me feel like a stubborn child. "We talked it over. Everyone agreed." I closed my eyes. "Everyone?" "Well, your mom, Celeste. Am I included in everyone's dad?" Silence. And there it was. Not an answer. Just the quiet confirmation that I had never truly been in the room where decisions got made, only in the cleanup crew afterward. I nodded to no one. "Thanks. That clears things up." I hung up before he could fill the air with anything else. And strangely, the first memory that floated back wasn't from this week, or even this year. It was from when I was 14. I'd fractured my wrist during gym class, landed wrong trying to block a volleyball. The nurse called home, but no one came. I sat on the bench in the front office as the sky turned from pale blue to pink to almost purple. Eventually, Mrs. Lenton, our neighbor down the street, offered to drive me to urgent care. That night, when Mom finally picked me up, she didn't say much. The radio played softly. I stared out the window. When I finally asked why no one had come, she answered like it was the most reasonable thing in the world. "Celeste had a recital. She couldn't go alone. You understand, don't you?" Back then, I nodded. I always nodded. Later, when I got the scholarship to UNC, I held the acceptance letter in my hands, like it was something sacred. I walked into the kitchen, hoping for a hug, maybe a smile. Mom glanced at it, then said, "That's good, Noreen. But don't brag. Celeste is still struggling with math." I remembered folding the letter in half and putting it in my desk drawer. I never brought it up again. So many little moments like that. Small, quiet cuts. Folded and stacked neatly in my memory, like linens no one used anymore. Kept for sentiment, not comfort. That evening, I went to the closet and pulled out the old metal filing box, the one where I kept every important paper that ever passed through my hands. Inside were folders, labeled carefully over the years. Taxes, leases, birth certificates, and the will. The one from my grandparents. They had made it simple. $160,000. Split evenly between Celeste and me. I opened my laptop, logged into my bank account, scrolled back through the records. Sure enough, $80,000 had landed in my account about 18 months ago. But it hadn't stayed. 2 large transfers out, one labeled Family Emergency, the other Tuition Support, CH. I opened a new tab. Typed in the old login for the state college database, just out of instinct. Celeste's student status showed as inactive. She hadn't been enrolled since 2018. I went back to my bank tab. The amount withdrawn from my inheritance, $72,500. What was left? $7,308.42. I stared at that number, long and hard, like maybe, if I looked long enough, it would confess something. But it didn't need to. The truth had been there all along, quiet, polite, and familiar. This wasn't about money. It was about years, decades, of being expected to understand, to be mature, to step aside, to give, 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 and never ask why. It was about the way people convince themselves you're okay because you don't raise your voice, because you don't cry, because you make it easy for them to forget that you, too, have limits. And maybe they weren't wrong, not until now. I had stayed quiet for a long, long time, but something had changed. A switch flipped, a line drawn, not with fire, but with steady, unwavering ink. The girl who once sat on a school bench with a cracked wrist and no ride home had grown into a woman who knew exactly what she deserved. And this time, I wasn't waiting for someone else to see my worth. This time, I was going to show them. We met again that Saturday, same table at Maple Finch Cafe, the one in the back corner, with the half-shaded window and the stubborn ivy that clung to the frame, even through the frost. There was something oddly comforting about being in a place that refused to let go. The coffee was warm, the air held that faint scent of cinnamon and old wood, and outside, snow drifted down like someone had shaken the edge of the sky. Jonas didn't ask why I'd asked to meet. He didn't need to. I must have looked like someone who hadn't slept, not exhausted, just unsettled. We sat in silence for a few minutes, the kind that doesn't ask to be filled. Then I said it, quietly, like it had been waiting for years in my throat. I've never said no to them, not once. He didn't blink, just nodded slowly, like he'd already figured that out on his own. Even when I wanted to, I added. Even when I knew they were wrong, I just couldn't. I kept thinking, if I was kind enough, patient enough, they'd eventually treat me like I mattered. Jonas stirred his coffee, but didn't drink it. You still can. I gave him a tired smile. It's too late for that. It's not too late, he said. It's just hard. And you've been trained your whole life to think silence equals love. I looked down at my hands. My fingers curled around the mug, like they needed something solid to hold on to. If I go through with this, I said, they'll never forgive me. I'll be the ungrateful one, the selfish daughter, the one who turned on her own family. You're not turning, he said gently. You're standing still. They're the ones who kept walking away. You're just finally staying in one place and saying, enough. I didn't respond. Just let the words settle like dust in my chest. There's a part of me, I admitted, that still wants their approval. Even now, it's pathetic. He shook his head. No, Noreen, it's human. We all want to be seen by the people who should have seen us first. He paused, then added, almost offhand, you know, my mom was kicked out when she divorced my dad. That caught me off guard. You never told me that. He shrugged. Her parents said she was a disgrace. She ended up living above a diner, working 2 jobs. Didn't speak to her brothers for over a decade. Did they ever make peace? Some sent cards, a few apologies. But she didn't need them to. That's what changed. I looked out the window as he spoke, watching the snow layer itself onto the brick sill. She lives alone now, he continued. Grows tomatoes, bakes bread, reads in the sun. She's the most peaceful person I know. I smiled, but it wobbled a little. She sounds brave. She is, he said, and so are you. Then he looked at me, straight and steady, and said something that split something open in me, gently but irreversibly. You can't lose people who never really held you, Noreen. You only lose the illusion. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Because in that moment, I realized he was right. I'd been grieving a version of family that never truly existed. I'd been protecting something that had never protected me. That night, back home, I sat at my desk, the one tucked under the window that faced the alley behind my building. The lamp cast a warm pool of light across the keyboard. The rest of the room was dark. I opened my laptop and searched for law firms specializing in estate disputes. There it was. East Haven Legal Group. Familiar, neutral, safe. Their intake form was simple: name, contact, a short description. My hands hovered over the keyboard. It felt like standing at the edge of a high dive, knees locked, heart fluttering. I typed, Noreen Marie Harrow. Then, inheritance discrepancy following the passing of grandparents. Possible financial misappropriation by parent. Requesting review of asset distribution. I stared at the submit button. I thought about all the birthdays no one called, the Christmases where there was no gift with my name, the photo albums where I was always cropped near the edge, like an afterthought, the silence that had been asked of me, not kindly, but constantly. And then, without ceremony, I clicked. Submit. There was no music, no sudden weight lifted, just a quiet confirmation ping, and the strange, still feeling of something shifting. Inside. I sat there for a long time after that. No tears, no regret, because I knew in that moment I'd finally done something I was never taught how to do. I'd said no. No more pretending it didn't hurt. No more bending to fit the shape of their comfort. No more waiting for permission to be whole. I didn't know what would happen next. But I knew this much. Whatever came, I'd face it on my feet, no longer trying to earn a place that was never freely given. I wasn't going to be quiet anymore. Not about this. Not about me. The first night after I submitted the legal inquiry, I didn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out, mind restless, stomach tight, body heavy like it had soaked in the weight of every unspoken thing I'd ever carried. I stared at the ceiling long after midnight, counting the lines in the drywall, listening to the radiator breathe. Around 3 a.m., I got up, wrapped a coat over my pajamas, and walked out into the snow. The sidewalks were quiet. The kind of quiet that made every footstep sound louder than it should. A thin blanket of snow had settled overnight, dusting the mailboxes and cars in a softness that didn't match how I felt inside. I walked without thinking, just one street, then another, until I found myself near the small park where Grandpa used to take me when I visited as a kid. He'd sit on the bench with his thermos of black coffee while I played on the swing set, always pushing me gently, never too high. Just enough so I knew he was there. He was the only one in the family who'd made me feel chosen. Not tolerated, not managed, chosen. I remembered how he'd press $5 bills into my palm when no one was looking and whisper, "Don't spend it on anyone but you, all right?" That night, under the glow of a street lamp and the hush of falling snow, I whispered back, "I'm sorry I waited this long." The next day, the email came through from the law office. Simple, direct, no frills. "We are moving forward with the formal request to review the estate distribution. Initial notification letters will be sent to involved parties, including Glendon and Rosellen Harrow, as per your submission." Just like that, it was official. I had taken a step that couldn't be undone. I had expected fear, maybe even regret, but what I felt instead was hollow, like I'd cleared out a room inside myself that had been packed with old boxes and dust. It wasn't peace, not yet, but it was space, and space felt like something new. That afternoon, the phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I picked up anyway. Some part of me already knew. "Noreen," Mom's voice cracked, tight and breathy. "What is this letter we got?" I didn't answer. You're having people investigate your father? Your own family? Are you out of your mind?" Still, I said nothing. She filled the silence. "I don't understand what's gotten into you. You know how this will look? The cousins, the church, your uncle? What will people think? How could you do this to us?" I swallowed hard. "I didn't do anything to you. I'm asking for what was mine. That's not how families work." "Maybe not in ours," I said, voice low. "But maybe that's the problem." There was a pause. Then her voice dropped into something softer. Manipulative, really. That honeyed tone I knew too well. "We were just trying to help Celeste. You know how hard it's been for her. You always had more." "No, Mom. I said, cutting her off. I had less. I just learned to live with it. She didn't say goodbye, just hung up. An hour later, my phone buzzed again. This time, a text from Celeste. You're sick. You know that? Suing your own parents? You're disgusting. You've always been jealous. Guess we finally see who you really are. I stared at the message until my eyes blurred. Not because it surprised me, but because some part of me still wanted something different from her. Maybe not an apology, but something human. A pause. A doubt. Anything. Instead, she gave me venom. I didn't reply. I sat at my kitchen table as the sun went down, watching the pale light slip through the blinds and stretch across the floor. Everything felt quiet again, but not the same kind of quiet as before. This quiet had edges. It had a backbone. I opened my laptop again, clicked into the secure portal the law firm had sent me. At the bottom of the page was the case number, Harrow versus Harrow. It looked surreal, typed out like that. Cold, legal, heavy. But it was real, and it was mine. I wasn't doing this because I hated them. I wasn't doing it to hurt anyone. I was doing it because I needed to stop disappearing inside my own life. Let them talk. Let them spin the story. Let them call me the villain if that's what made them sleep better at night. I knew the truth, and that was enough. The letters had barely gone out a week when the calls started pouring in. Not from my parents this time, but from everyone else. My mom's sisters, old neighbors I hadn't spoken to in years, even a girl I barely knew from high school who apparently still kept tabs on our family through social media. At first, it was just guilt veiled as concern. Noreen, honey, are you okay? You really sure you want to go through with this? Then came the pity. I know it must be hard, but families go through things. You'll work it out. And finally, the judgment. Your parents always gave you a roof, didn't they? What kind of daughter sues her own father? The worst came from Aunt Geneva, my mother's older sister. She called around dinner time, like she used to when I was little, and needed a ride home from school. I don't understand you, she said, voice sharp with disappointment. What you're doing? It's not just wrong, it's unheard of. No one in this family has ever done something like this. I stared out the window as she spoke, watching a squirrel dig through leftover snow on the porch railing. Maybe, I said slowly, that's why someone finally has to. She didn't reply, just hung up without saying goodbye. That Saturday, I got a text from Mom. Short, no punctuation. Come to your Aunt Pam's Sunday 2 p.m. We're talking, like family. I should have said no. But some part of me, some echo of who I used to be, still wanted to give them one last chance to hear me. I showed up on time. Everyone else was already there. The living room at Aunt Pam's smelled like old wood polish and lemon cake. Same as always. Family photos lined the mantel, most of which didn't include me. I took a seat near the corner, furthest from the fireplace, closest to the exit. Mom stood in the middle, flanked by Dad and Celeste, like it was some kind of trial. She didn't waste time. Well, she began, hands clasped, I suppose we're all here because Noreen believes she's been mistreated, stolen from, lied to. Her voice dripped with performance, each word like it had been rehearsed in front of the mirror. She turned to me with narrowed eyes. You know, I always thought you were the reasonable one. Quiet, reliable. But this is selfish, Noreen. This is betrayal. I didn't flinch. I'd expected worse. Dad spoke next, low and tired. You could have just asked. We would have worked something out. Celeste stayed quiet, arms folded, looking out the window like she didn't even want to be there. Then Mom leaned forward, voice rising just enough for effect. You're dragging our name through the mud. For what? A few $1,000s? You really think this is about justice? This is about control, about you being bitter, about you wanting more than what you've already been given. I stood up. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't cry. I just stood there, surrounded by people who shared my last name, but had never truly seen me. I never wanted your money, I said. I just wanted to matter. The silence that followed was loud, in a way no yelling could ever be. Eyes shifted, chairs creaked. Aunt Pam cleared her throat and looked down. No one said a word. I walked out without being stopped. Jonas was waiting in his car at the curb. He didn't ask how it went. He just opened the passenger door and turned down the radio. We drove for a few minutes in silence, the kind that settles deep and doesn't need explaining. Halfway home, he reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a photo. It was small, worn at the edges. I recognized it instantly. Me, no older than 5, sitting on Grandpa's lap, both of us laughing like we'd just told a secret the world didn't deserve. Jonas flipped it over. In my grandfather's handwriting were 4 simple words. She's the strong one. I held the photo in my lap as we rode the rest of the way. The weight of everything I hadn't said somehow lighter, now that something had finally been heard. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a problem to be managed. I felt like a person. And more than that, I felt like myself. The courthouse smelled like lemon disinfectant and old paper. Clean, stale, familiar. Nothing dramatic. Just the kind of ordinary that made everything else feel heavier by contrast. It wasn't a trial, just a hearing. A formal step in a formal process. But to me, it felt like crossing a line I couldn't uncross. A kind of quiet finality. I wore black slacks and a soft gray sweater, simple earrings I'd worn to work 100 times. No lipstick, no perfume. I wasn't there to perform. I wasn't there for attention. I just wanted to be seen, clearly, fully, for once. They were already there when I walked in. My parents, Celeste, 3 people who had shaped my life more than they would ever know, sitting in a row of wooden chairs like strangers at a bus station. None of them looked up. My attorney, Miss Halperin, leaned toward me with that calm steadiness she always carried. "We'll present the transfer records first," she said softly. "You've already done the hardest part. Now we let the truth do its job." I nodded. I didn't trust my voice. When the judge entered and we all rose, my legs moved before my mind caught up. I felt like I was floating a little outside myself, watching everything happen, but also feeling every breath, every shift in the room, like it was stitched into my skin. Then the proceedings began. Ms. Halperin spoke clearly, but without cruelty. Just facts. She walked through the terms of the will, equal distribution between Celeste and me, the transfers that had gone missing from my portion, the movement of those funds into an account under Celeste's name. All of it authorized by my father. None of it disclosed. She showed the bank records, highlighted the inconsistencies in signatures, the lack of documentation, the withdrawals labeled emergency support without any supporting paperwork. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. The weight of what was missing said enough. My father sat still, hands folded over his stomach, eyes down. No protest, no apology, just silence. My mother stared at the table in front of her, jaw tight, blinking slow and hard like she was trying not to cry, or maybe just trying not to feel. Celeste kept her face tilted away from me. Her hair fell forward like a shield. She didn't speak. She didn't look. She didn't even shift in her seat, as if sitting still could somehow undo the truth unraveling around her. The judge asked a few questions, legal ones, technical ones. No one shouted. There were no outbursts, but inside I could feel the noise. Years of swallowed words and folded feelings finally taking shape in a room that couldn't pretend not to hear them anymore. When it was over and we stood again, I thought I might cry, but I didn't. I just felt tired, bone-deep tired, like my body had been carrying a weight I didn't name until I finally set it down. As I gathered my bag, I felt someone step close. It was my mother. She didn't say a word, just stood in front of me, stiff and quiet, her eyes unreadable. For a second, her mouth twitched like she might speak, but then she didn't. She turned to walk away. I should have let her go, but something in me stirred, slow and calm, like a stone settling at the bottom of a still pond. I called after her. You told me once that family means not turning your back. She stopped just for a moment. I took a breath. I just stopped turning mine. She didn't look back. She walked away slower than before. But she still walked. Outside, the sky was thick with clouds, the kind that make the world look hushed and heavy. The air smelled like rain, waiting its turn. Jonas was there on the steps, his hands in his coat pockets. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. He was just there. We sat together on the cold bench outside, letting the silence do what silence sometimes does best: hold space. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. I don't care about the money. He nodded. I know. A few days later, Ms. Halperin called. The judge has issued a freeze on the estate, she said. A financial review will follow. If you'd like, we can file to reclaim what was misappropriated. I let her finish. Then I asked her to write something else instead. I wanted the assets divided fairly, not retroactively, not as payback, just clearly, transparently. And I asked to have my name removed from any future family-controlled accounts. She paused. Are you sure? That's a significant amount to walk away from. Yes, I said. That's exactly why I'm walking away. Because this had never been about the money. It was about claiming my name, my voice, and the space I'd always been told I wasn't supposed to take up. 2 days later, I signed the final documents. My hand didn't shake. It didn't feel like surrender. It felt like finally unlocking a door that had been locked for too many years, with too many keys that never quite fit. And in that moment, I knew I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their understanding. I didn't need to be folded neatly back into a place that never had room for me. I just needed to know that from now on, no one could use the word family to keep me small or silent ever again. The final ruling came on a rainy Tuesday. I sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd first opened that resort email months ago, and read through the judge's decision with my coffee going cold beside me. Glendon Harrow, found in breach of fiduciary duty regarding the inheritance distribution, was ordered to repay the misallocated funds to the estate. Moving forward, his financial activity would be monitored by a court-appointed trustee. Rosellen and Celeste Harrow were not formally charged, but were barred from accessing any remaining funds in the estate without legal oversight. I read it twice. Not because I didn't understand, but because something in me wanted to feel more than I did. No joy, no vindication, just quiet. That evening, my phone lit up. A single text. Hope you're happy. You've torn this family apart. No name, but I didn't need one. I sat with the message for a while. Not angry, not even hurt, really. Just tired. I typed back one line. The house broke long before I said a word. Then I turned off the phone and let the silence settle around me like a soft blanket. 2 weeks later, I moved. I didn't tell many people, not because I was hiding, but because the new place wasn't about anyone else. It was about me, a small one-story cottage in Willow Glen, south of Asheville, with a sloped roof and a screened-in porch that looked out on a thicket of pine trees. The air smelled like sap and soil. There were birds I didn't recognize, and a fox that sometimes wandered by the edge of the yard. I planted daffodils along the fence and left a chair near the window where the afternoon sun came in just right. The money I'd refused, the portion of the inheritance that had nearly been stolen, then legally offered back, never touched my hands. Instead, it was reallocated, per my request, to a new community fund I helped create through my attorney. We called it the Harrow Endowment for Dignity and Fairness. I thought Grandpa would have liked that. The fund supported legal aid for elders in financial abuse cases, grandparents, widows, folks like him who'd trusted family too easily, too long. Jonas showed up one snowy morning, carrying a basket with jam jars and a warm pear tart. No housewarming gifts allowed? I teased, opening the door. He raised an eyebrow. This isn't a gift. This is survival food. Winter's coming. We sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching snowflakes drift down like they had all the time in the world. After a long silence, he asked, "If you had to do it all over again, would you still press send on that legal form?" I didn't answer right away, just watched the wind tease the branches, bending but never breaking. Then I smiled. Yes, but this time I'd press it sooner. He nodded, said nothing more. We sat there until the tart was gone and the sky had turned to ash. That night, as I stood by the window with a mug of tea and watched the snow layer the trees, I thought about everything I'd walked through. It hadn't been pretty, it hadn't been easy, but it had been mine. And maybe that was the point all along. Not to win, not to prove, but to finally step into the life I'd always postponed for the sake of other people's comfort. Sometimes you don't need a grand apology. Sometimes you just need the silence after everything breaks to realize you were never the broken one. Maybe all of us, at some point, have stayed quiet because we thought it was the right thing to do, the kind thing, the way to keep the peace. But sometimes that silence slowly makes us disappear from our own lives, without even realizing it. I'm not telling this story to blame anyone or to judge a family. I'm telling it because I know that feeling of being overlooked, pushed aside, even when you're always there. And if you've ever felt anything like that, I just want you to know you're not alone, and you don't need to apologize for finally choosing to protect yourself. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll stay with me for the next ones. Because maybe, in another story down the line, you'll see yourself clearer than ever.